Hello and welcome to ProStitcher Premium Basics. My name is Linda Jackson and I'm the Handy Quilter UK Ambassador and Educator. We're going to look at ProStitcher Premium as it is at the moment with the latest release, and as we go along, if there are any more releases, I will update the videos accordingly. The first thing you're going to do when you load your ProStitcher on your computer is you're going to set up the display so that when you are looking at designs and you want the one-to-one view, so for 1 inch on the screen equals 1 inch on the real design, you need to set the monitor up accordingly. So the first thing you're going to do is you're going to look across here at the top of the right hand side and look at the cog symbol just there. Select that one and then you're going to select display on the left hand side, top left just there. Come down and across to the right hand side and you have the monitor box here. Now this is where you'll need to measure the size of the monitor that you're going to be working on, whether it be a laptop or a desktop, and then just enter the width and the height accordingly just there. The window will then change as you bring up the ProStitch Premium program and the window itself becomes either larger or smaller. These will change automatically, so don't worry about those after that. Okay, so once you've done that and your screen is all set up for a one-to-one view, we're going to look at all the other aspects of the program. So all your file tabs, or the tabs across the top here, and then all the buttons that it will produce along the side, along the top just there, the ones down each side. And then we have this area over at this side where different things will pop up at different times. Okay, so the first thing we're going to look at, as we say, is the display. We've set your monitor already, and the next one is the touch. So this one here, if it's green, it's selected. If it's not green, it's not selected. What happens here is when you have got this selected on your main pad, so the one that's attached to the machine, it means that you'll be able to put your finger on the screen and drag it around. Now this won't change anything, it won't change any designs, it won't change any of the zoom elements, but it will just mean that you will be able to move the screen across and back again. So just to simulate that, we have this pan button here. So if I click on pan and I click and hold, you can see that everything moves on the screen, but nothing actually moves in relation to where it's placed on the screen. So the crosshairs will stay at the 0 and 0 mark. As you can see, it just means that if I've got a design up at this side, I can bring it down and have a look, and the same in all these different corners here. Okay, if I hover over this line just here, I can click and drag and bring this out or in. So this gives me just a little bit more working space on the screen just here. I can also get rid of that altogether by clicking on that arrow, which hides it, or this one to bring it back out. So if you're wanting to work in the bigger space, you can always hide that if you wish to. Right, next bit that we're going to look at is assign. And now that I've clicked that button, as you can see now, all of these down here have now grown slightly in size. If I unclick it, there we go. And they've all got a little arrow underneath now. This means that there's something else that can be done with that button. Now if I just choose one, so I'll choose the two little ducks, which at the moment is follow, I click on that arrow, this pops out, this selection box. This means that I can change any of these down here at any point in time that I wish to and reassign that button. So I could change the follow to design, I could change it to measure, I could change it to mark, or I can put it back to the two little ducks. As you go along and you start to use your ProStitcher more and more, you will find that you use certain aspects of the program more than others. And so what this allows you to do is to put those aspects, those selections down in this side so that you can use them more regularly than going into the appropriate tabs up here and trying to find them. So all of these are the ones that I use on a regular basis, and on my machine they will be set up the same as well. Okay, so once you've done that and you've had a play with that, we'll deselect the assign button, and now you can see that they're all back as a normal button. The next one along then to have a look at is defaults. So if we select defaults, you can see that there are only two that have appeared on this side here. Now these will become more apparent as we go further into the program, but basically nudge is set at 0.05 inches. This allows you to nudge a design at a set size, or a set distance should I say. So if you have a design selected and you are in the modify tab, now we haven't got a design on at the moment, but you can see that we have a reposition tab just there. When you're in that tab, you can nudge your design bit by bit so it gets into exactly the right place that you want it to be. Again, like I say, this will become more apparent and more understandable when we get further into the program. Auto jump. If you have two designs selected or more on your machine, on your computer, and you have more than 6 inches between each start and stop point, the machine will stop at the first one and wait for you to trim the threads and then tell it to continue on to the next one if it is more than 6 inches apart. Again, when we get further into the program, you'll find that you'll be able to change that, and we can change it down to 4 or 8 or whatever you want it to be. The one thing to consider though is the quilting that you are doing. Do you want the machine to pull on the thread from one point to another any further than 6 inches? What is the quilt like that you are quilting on? Will it, by doing that, by allowing the machine to pull with the threads and just drag the threads across without cutting, etc., will it possibly pucker the quilt itself, or will it be okay? That choice is yours. You can change that, like I say, at any time. Down here you can put it back to factory settings at any point in time. If you get yourself in such a mess that you need to do that, just click factory settings. Okay, next one along is OptiStitch. Now you can customize or not. So I have deselected customize, and now you can see here acceleration, although it's faded, it says 40% and speed is 100%. I would suggest that you select customize and you change those settings. Now on the computer, rather than on your machine pad, on the computer it doesn't really matter what you've got these set at. You can have them set right at the top on both of them because you're not actually stitching. However, on your machine, I would suggest that to start off with you have the acceleration at anything between 25 and 40, and your speed at anything between 40 and 70 to start off with. So what do these two mean? Acceleration, if you have a design and it has a lot of points, this is the speed that the machine will go into and out of those points. Now you don't want the machine to be bouncing around, you don't want it to be bouncing in and out, you want it to be controlled, and you want the stitches as a result of that to be all regular. So acceleration, like as I say, you need it to be at a reasonable speed. The speed percentage is the speed, or the percentage of the maximum speed that your machine will stitch at. Now the bigger the machine, the faster the machine will stitch. Again, you don't want it to be racing around. I would suggest, like I say, that you have it at a reasonable speed until you're used to it, or until you decide that actually the design is quilting quite nicely, and you can, during the quilting process, pop that speed up a little bit if you want to. Again, like I say, we will go through that a little bit more when we go into the ProStitcher tab just here, and we go into the actual stitching or simulating the stitching. Okay, the next one along is Auto Jump. Now this one, as we have had, and the defaults just there is your Auto Jump at 6 there, but you can change it here if you wish to, like I say, up or down, it's entirely up to you. So it will jump from the last end point to the next start point 6 inches, or if it's over 6 inches it will stop at the stop point, wait for you to trim your threads, etc., and then tell the machine to continue stitching. Stitches per inch. Okay. This is the stitches per inch that you can select for your machine to start to quilt. You can change this at any point in time, again as you wish. Just come into this one and change it over, so you can have it at 10, or you can have it a lot smaller if it's a smaller design and you want it to be an intricate and accurate stitch. Again, it's entirely up to you. Some people prefer just normal stitching to be at 10, some people prefer it to be at 11 and 12. Your preference, and like I say, you can change it there all the time. If I select based just there, you can see that it's set at every 1/4 of an inch just there. Now, because this is on my computer, it won't let me change that. However, on your pad, on your machine, you will have the opportunity of having the minus and the plus signs again, and you can change that up or down just the same. Select the basting stitches or the size of the basting stitches that you require. Okay, tie-offs is the next one along. As you can see, we have a start, an end, and then we have a selection of the type of tie-off that we can do. We can tack, or it can do micro stitches. You can select the number of stitches for it to do, either 3, 4, more if you wish to, or less. And you can change the distance that you want those stitches to be at. Now this defaults at 0.06. Again, you can change that if you wish, or you can reduce it. Tack will do just that, so it will do 3 stitches at that distance, and it will go 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, because that's the number that's selected there, and then it will begin to stitch normally. If you select micro, it will do the 3 tiny little stitches, and then it will begin to stitch normally. Now you can select either one of those, and you can select to have it to do that either at the start or at the end, or not at all, just by deselecting. And again, you can come into those and just change them around if you wish to at any point in time. Okay, pull up. So you have 2 options here again. You've got pull up on and you've got pull up auto. Pull up on will drop the drop the needle into the fabric and bring it out again, so that you can pull up the bobbin thread, and it will disengage the gears for a short amount of time for you, so you can move the machine away, so that you can grab hold of those 2 threads and then bring the machine back across into position. And it doesn't have to be exact, because the ProStitcher will actually put it back into that start position on its own. Pull up auto, if you select that one, it will move the machine automatically for you. So it will put the needle into the fabric, it will bring it out, and then it will move across slightly so that you can grab those threads, and then once you tell the ProStitcher to continue to stitch, it will come back into position and continue to stitch the design for you. Again, that will become more obvious as we go along. The next one then is pause delay. As you can see, this one is active at the moment, or I can turn it off. But when I select it, you can see we've got seconds or we've got inches, and we've got the 2 just here, which again is adjustable. So when you start to stitch and you have pause delay on, the machine will stitch for either 2 seconds or 2 inches, and then it will stop. This allows you to either trim your threads or move them out of the way so that they're not going to get tangled up in the rest of the design. You then tell the machine to continue to stitch. Simple as that. Cut thread, that can only be on if you have an Infinity or any other machine that has the thread cutters on them. Next one along is stitch stats. Tells you how many stitches the design has, how many seconds it would take to stitch it out, and how many inches of thread that design would use. Now these are all approximate, obviously. Advanced. Okay, there are certain things in here that you need to know about at this time, and there are others that you don't really need to know about. until you've got a problem, and then what will happen is then Handy Quilter will tell you to go into this section and have a look at certain areas and tell them what's happening. Okay, so the first one here as we've gone into it is general. And you can see here that the thread break sensor is not selected, so you can select it to turn it on or turn it off. Not all machines have got thread break sensors, so again that depends on the type of machine that you have. Verify before quilt, I would suggest you have selected at all times. When you tell the machine to start stitching, before it does anything it will say OK, and it will bring up a little box on here for you, and it will say I want you to have a look at these and make sure that everything is set as you want it to be. So it will verify with you that you want that to be stitching at 12 stitches per inch, you want it to do the tie-offs, etc. Again, this will show you and become more apparent as and when we get round to that section, but like I say, I would have that selected at all times. Keep motors locked. I deselect that. If you select it, the machine will stitch the design, and when it comes to the end and it's finished the last stitch in that design for you, the motors will stay locked, so you won't be able to move the machine, and you will have to come up to the motors section up here, release the motors, and then you can move the machine to be able to get to the threads, etc., to cut them. I always keep that off because when it's finished the last stitch, I want to just be able to move the machine, cut the threads, and then go on to the next bit. Simulation, you can have it activated or not on the machine or on your pad. I would suggest that's a personal choice. If you are not going to be using sim on your pad, you can take it off, the one that's attached to your machine, but obviously on the computer you will have sim on. Load start point at crosshairs or load point to point. This will become more apparent when we start loading designs, but basically you can have it to load at the crosshairs, so the design would load here, and every time you loaded it, if you didn't move the crosshairs at all, it would load every design right in the middle just there. If you have load point to point, it will load it one next to each other or on top of each other, depending on where the start and end points are. Again, like I say, this will become more apparent when I start loading for you. But if you have a continuous design for, say, a border, and you're wanting to put 4 or 5 together, what you really don't want to be doing is dragging them towards each other so that they all connect. If you select load point to point, the second design start point will load directly on top of the first design's end point, therefore making it a continuous line. Again, like I say, this will probably become more understandable when we get into that section. I tend to load point to point because if I have copied and pasted, I want to know that there are 2 designs there that and I actually have the 2, and I want to see that they are separate. Again, like I say, this will become more apparent as we go along. So the next one is communications, and you'll find that there's 2 options here: reconnecting the motors and reconnecting the machine. It's obviously important that the machine talks to the ProStitcher tablet, and this is where you would reconnect that bit, and reconnecting the motors to engage them and make them work again is on this bit here. It's very rare that you'll have to go into these bits, but you need to know where they are just in case. Speed profile, I wouldn't do anything with that one. Login is where, as I say, if you have to contact Handy Quilters and ask them because you've got a problem, they will probably ask you to come into here and tell you what it says from there. Again, like I say, you really don't need to be looking at that at the moment. And motors, it's the torque limit again. The default is 100. I don't mess about with that one. You can, if you wish, reduce that. Basically, it's the nudge factor on the machine before it says, oops, something's gone wrong. So if it ran into the bars on the front of the machine because you've got the design set wrongly or something, this is where the torque limit would be. So it would have to run into the bars with a certain amount of force before it shuts everything off for you and stops the machine from moving. Again, mine's set at 100. I've never found any reason to change that. Okay, so that's a quick run through on these across the top here. You will also see just here a big question mark. If you forget what any of these mean, you can click on that question mark and it tells you that it's a help screen on the pad itself and also on the computer. So I could click on pull up and it will tell you all about pull up. I can click on advanced and it will tell you all about advanced. I can click on, oops, turn that back on again. I can click on any of these along here as well, so vertical, and it will tell you all about these different bits and pieces. So if you just get stuck, there's always that one for you. The motors here, this is when you're engaging or disengaging the motors. Again, that's only when you start the stitching. Okay, let's have a look at some of the other icons that we have on here. If we start off at the left, we have, as you can hover over it, you can see it says select all, multi-select and select none. So this is when you have your designs on the screen, you can either select none because you're wanting to do something else like bring in an area, etc. You can select more than one, so you can choose which ones you're wanting to select, or you can select the whole lot, so you can select them all and move them all or resize them all at the same time, etc. Okay. If we go back over to this side, we have the magnification, as I say, but we also have two houses here. This one says center underneath it. Now that will center the design or the designs that you have active on your screen, and it will put that center of all of them or the single one right in the middle of the screen. What it won't do is it won't alter the magnification. So if you are zoomed in quite heavily onto a design, it won't change that. It will simply bring the center of that design into that area there. If you want to see all of the designs and the whole of the design that you have on, so whether it's a single or a multiple sets of designs, you click refresh, and that one will bring all of the designs into view. So let me demonstrate that for you. If I bring in a design and I move it up there, for instance, if I press center, it's brought the center of that design into the center of the screen just there, but it hasn't changed how far I am zoomed in or not. So if I put it back up there, zoom in slightly, and then I click center again, as you can see, it's still that same zoom size, but the center is still just there. Alright, now if I move it again there and I click this one, which is the refresh button, and as you hover over it, it's just dropped outside the vision of the screen actually on here, but underneath it, it says refresh. So if I click refresh, it refreshes the screen, it brings in all the designs that I have, but it also brings in where your needle is at the time. Now these crosshairs represent the needle, and this simulates the needle point itself. So it brings in where your needle is currently and all the other designs. So if I brought in another design and popped it down there, and I click refresh again, you can see it's brought in that design as well, and that one, and it centers the whole lot. Okay, again, this will make a little bit more sense when we get further into the program itself and into the ProStitcher and repeats, etc. Okay, the next button along is a 1-to-1, so that's the actual size. So if you've set your screen up at the beginning, like I said, and you have put the screen dimensions in there, if I click 1-to-1, this is actually the actual size of the design or that it will stitch out at on the quilt itself. The next one along here is zoom into area. Now we don't have an area selected at the moment, but if I had an area on the page, it would zoom into that one. And if this one is zoom to design, so if I click on that, it zooms into that one design, and it's the one that is selected and working. So if I bring in another design here, and bring that one across there, this one is the selected one, that one isn't selected, click on that one and you zoom into that selected one. If you've done that and you've got several on there and you get yourself a little bit mixed up and you can't find the one that you're looking for, click the refresh button and all the designs will become visible on your screen. So while we're on this little bit just here and we're looking at the sidebar, if you look further down, we have a rename option. So if you have several of these open, or you have a group of them open, you can rename these if you wish. So if I was putting that one on the blue block on the quilt and this one on a red block on a quilt, that one is the highlighted one, as I say, so that one's active. If I click rename, I can clear that, and as you saw, that said block 17 1 2 3. It will give you its own name because you're trying to rename the design, so it will just put numbers on the end. So I've cleared that off, and I'm going to call this, I think I said red block, didn't I, for this side, so I'm going to put red block, and I'm going to click enter. Now I can differentiate and select the ones that I want to, if I wish to, on the side here. So if I open that block again, so I've got 3 here. If I go into the workspace, you can see block 17 is there again. I can highlight that one, click on the rename, you can see block 17 140, so it's giving it numbers again. Clear that one, and this is going to be the green blocks. And enter. So you can select it a lot easier if you've got the designs up. This becomes a lot easier as well. If you have the same design but at different sizes, you can then choose the sizes. So you could actually call it block 17 small or large, or whatever suits what you're doing at the time. But it's a little handy aspect of the program that a lot of people tend to forget about, and they'll just jump through all these different designs that's on there trying to find the right one. Okay, let's move on to the next bit.